information to you. I think for some of you, this is going to be stuff that you already know, but other people, it's going to be completely different from what you ever heard. And hopefully it is going to be something that is going to really help you working with your clients and patients that are obese, and you're trying to help them manage their weight. So I got some great information for you today. The learning objectives for today. So we are going to first identify what is your role going to be when you're working with a patient that would like your help managing their weight. And we do have a very important role on this team. And we want to identify the ways that we're going to be using occupation to help the person manage their weight. They're going to use that to help them make those healthy lifestyle changes. What are the stages of change, and how are we going to use this to help us guide our patient through those stages of change so that, because this is hard to do, how are we going to help them make those changes? And there are certain techniques that you can use depending on what stage of change they're in. So I'm going to help you identify what their stage of change is, and then what are the good techniques to use in that stage. And then what are the evidence-based recommendations for weight management. They are changing, and it's not what we've been looking at for the last 40 years, so I got some new stuff for you. And then understand the key elements of, if you would like to make your own lifestyle redesign program, what are the key elements and how do you start your own program? So let's first look at the enormity of the problem. I think a lot of people are already familiar with this graphic from CDC. They show the progression of obesity among U.S. adults as it progresses. I think the first one is actually like 1980 or something that shows progressing every 5 years, until this latest one I could get was 2014. And as those colors get darker, we're getting more and more obese, so that now fully over a third of the U.S. adults are obese. And that's a BMI of over 30. If you're looking at just overweight and obesity, we're talking 2/3 of U.S. Americans, adults, are overweight and obese. So this is a huge part of our population. A lot of people that can use our help. Obesity affects every organ of the body. So we look at pulmonary system, sleep apnea, COPD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It used to be you only got fatty liver disease if you had a drinking problem. Not anymore. It happens now with obesity. Skin problems, arthritis, high blood pressure, cardiovascular problems, the list goes on. We know that we have a lot of comorbidities with obesity. Usually your person who's coming to you is not coming to you for weight management. They're coming to you because they need help with their arthritis and modifying their tasks. But you're also noticing that they also have obesity, so how can we help them with that too? So this is what I did in my own clinic. I have a private practice in lymphedema, and I kind of had the sense that a lot of my patients were overweight and obese. So I had some fantastic OT students that were helping me. Thank you, OT students. Are you out there? Yes. So I did they did a 6-month chart review for me. So 6-month period, all my patients, and we looked at a variety of parameters. The one thing I did have to do was what is the BMI of that population. So 55 patients over that 6 months. Wow, look at this. 27%, only 27% were normal weight. All the rest were overweight and obese. But even more astounding, 22% were morbidly obese. This was a big problem just in my little clinic. So what can we do about it? What's going to be our role as OT practitioners in weight management? Actually, a lot. So we're going to be working with ADLs. How are we going to modify those tasks so they can complete their ADLs, given that they've got to get by a large belly, they don't have the reach, they have pain, whatever. Mobility, getting in and out of a car, how's transportation matters going to be handled? a big problem with our people who have obesity. Activity tolerance and endurance. I think I stole this right off of an OTA fact sheet on obesity, if you recognize that little graphic there. And work modification, and then family and community involvement. We want our people to have maximal engagement. Household accommodation, so we need to have toilets that are going to accommodate weight and girth. We want to have appropriate seating in and outside of the house, and as well as in the office. And then functional mobility. How are they getting around? Can OTs do anything with food? I've had a lot of occupational therapists ask me, is it really in our scope of practice? What can I do with diet? Because we know it's a big part of weight management. Well, it turns out we can do a lot. We can help with proper food selection and grocery shopping. We can help with meal planning and meal preparation. And yes, we can talk about food selection. I copied this right out of the AOTA position paper on obesity and occupational therapy. And it's saying occupational therapy interventions can facilitate weight loss and enable clients to make healthy changes in the daily life, including or incorporating productive and social activity, as well as informed choices about eating habits. So yes, it is in our scope of practice. We should be recommending a good, healthy diet to our patients. So then the next thing I needed was a framework for my practice in helping my patients with their weight management. And I really was drawn to occupational science. I recently completed my doctorate at University of Utah, and that was my first exposure to occupational science. When I went to San Jose State, we talked about MOHO and didn't really get into occupational science. I was really drawn to this. I really liked the concepts in occupational science. So in talking about maximal inclusion and participation in all daily life activities, but what I really liked was justice. Because obesity is one of the last things it's okay to discriminate against. It's okay to ridicule. And I really felt like my patients needed someone to stand up for them, to advocate for them, to get justice for them. Main thing I tell my patients is, it's not your fault. I'm going to show you why you become obese, and it's not your fault. So I really like the aspect of justice. And out of course, the occupational science, USC did the great well-elderly studies that gave birth to lifestyle redesign, published in both JAMA and AJOT. And what they found from those randomized controlled trials is that occupational preventive OT has positive effects on health, occupational functioning, and life satisfaction. So when we do our lifestyle modification groups, our lifestyle redesign groups, we can really have an effect on our person's quality of life, engagement, occupational engagement, and that gave birth to lifestyle redesign. So really what we're doing with lifestyle redesign is it's the process of acquiring health-promoting habits and routines in daily life. We're helping them form new habits that are going to be healthy habits. Sometimes they don't even know what they've been engaging in has not been healthy. So we're going to be showing them how they can change and guiding them through that process of change, which is quite difficult. I do want to give a little plug-in for USC's Life Management Series. Is there anybody who already know about this? I think Nina told me you took that class. Yeah. So it's online, 4 pieces to it. And if you really want to know about lifestyle redesign, go right to the source. And they give this online class that you can get PDUs for. And the first one is just Introduction to Lifestyle Redesign. But the second one is Weight and Diabetes Management. Perfect. But I knew that's what I wanted to design, so I took all 4 of the courses actually. And the next one with chronic pain, headache, and then psychosocial dimensions. I mean, all stuff is going to come into play with a lifestyle redesign group for someone who's obese. So what are the components of our lifestyle redesign? First, we're going to have a didactic presentation. A PowerPoint usually is what I did in my group. And it was a very short PowerPoint. I usually had 10, 12 slides. And then we're going to have peer exchange. We're going to have some kind of group discussion. Maybe as each slide is coming up, it's stimulating discussion. We want this, I'm the leader of the group, but we want everybody to be engaged in the group, and so encouraging that discussion. And then, of course, direct experience. Going out in the community and having experience either with the OT guiding it, or you're planning in your session so that they can then do that on their own out in the community. And remember that lifestyle redesign can be done one-on-one, or it can be done as a group. I chose the group setting, but you can see your clients one-on-one also. And then the personal exploration, the self-reflection. I liked it. I would incorporate that at the end of each session, but I would also give them opportunities to do that in between sessions. This is very important to their growth and progression. The other thing that I used to help me design my program was I used Eric Westman's program at the Duke Lifestyle Medicine Clinic in Durham, North Carolina. And he has a clinic for people who are obese and may also have diabetes. And so I had the opportunity to shadow him for a day and see each of his patients. I did tell him it would be really good if you had an OT on your team. Yeah. But not happened yet. But as I watched what he was doing, I really learned a lot. And he had a lot of things he would say to his patients. Things like, eat whenever you're hungry, but stop when you're full. That's a habit that OTs would be helping our patients with. That is a new habit. They're trained to, they have a plate full of food, I have to eat the whole plate, whether or not I'm hungry or not, right? It's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime, I'm not hungry, but this is time to eat. So we're making those new habits based on some of these concepts of eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. Fruit is nature's candy. You have it sparingly, it's a treat. It's not something that we really need to have 6 servings a day of. Stuff like this, as I used his concepts with my program. And his basic dietary changes, I used his diet, and his was a no sugar, no starch program. And I will go in more on this in a few minutes, but I just want to introduce you to it right now. This is what I used for the basis of my program, was his dietary recommendations. And he did use a group situation to introduce or orient his patients to that diet. And so I kind of got the idea of the group dynamic with that. So we would get 20 or so of the patients together and then go over this diet. It's an 8-page handout. And on page 4, he says, here's what you eat. If it's not on page 4, don't eat it. And so that was a grocery list. I thought, this is perfect. This is designing my program for me because it's all talking about the habit formation, the grocery shopping, the meal planning, the food selection, everything was in this handout. So we'll talk about that some more later. But first, we're going to back up. Something else that I learned from Dr. Westman was what's the basis to what we're using for our food choices. What really is a healthy diet? And so what he talked about was first, what is the insulin response to the different macronutrients? We only can eat 3 things, either fats, carbs, or proteins. So what is the insulin response to each of those? Because insulin's job is 2 things. One, to remove the sugar from the blood, the glucose from the blood. And the other is to promote fat storage. And so when we eat carbohydrates, you can see the insulin response is quite dramatic. When we eat protein, not as dramatic, but still an insulin response. When we eat fat, pretty much flatline. We're not getting a lot of insulin response from that. But let's also look at what's happening to the blood sugar levels when we eat the various macronutrients. So when we eat carbs, we have a dramatic increase in blood sugar. Insulin takes care of it, and it dives well below baseline. So we get hypoglycemic at that point. Protein, we do have an increase in blood sugar, but not as high as carbs, and it does dive a little bit below baseline. Fat, pretty much flat line. Not a lot happening with blood sugar when we eat fat. This was all new stuff to me. Not what you heard about. I actually modified this graphic from Sarah Helberg, who does a diabetes and weight management clinic, I think in Pennsylvania. And she talks about this vicious cycle that happens. When you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar is going to rise. Insulin is going to come out to take care of it. Insulin gets it out of the blood, so now you're hungry again, and it also promotes fat storage. So we've just stored more fat and we're hungry. So what do? We eat more carbohydrates. This is a cycle that happens, and this is why it's not the patient's fault that they become obese. They've been told that a healthy diet is 45 to 65% carbohydrate. They're caught in this cycle. Not everybody is intolerant to carbohydrates. We know lots of vegetarians that have a very high carbohydrate content in their diet and do not become obese. But your poor obese patient is very carbohydrate intolerant, and they are caught in this cycle. So it is not their fault. They think they're eating a healthy diet. Yes, they're having cake and candy too, but they're definitely eating lots of bread and other things that they think are healthy, and it's caught them into this vicious cycle. So this is what happens. I put you on this high carbohydrate diet on 20 years ago and gave you diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Oops. This is exactly what happened. Our medical professionals thought this was right. This is what they were told. This is what we were told. We thought this was correct, and it wasn't, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, now we're caught into this very bad obesity epidemic. But it really all started with this guy. Back in 1955, Eisenhower had a heart attack while he was in office. This was a dramatic event. The president has a heart attack. That's pretty terrifying. Of course, you're going to get the best physician in the land to take care of the president. And that person was unfortunately influenced by researchers who felt that fat, dietary fat, was giving you heart attacks. Fat was the villain. And so they told Eisenhower to go to a very low-fat diet. It didn't seem to matter that he was also a chain smoker. So he went on a very low-fat diet, and that started to permeate into American culture, because if the president's doing that, that's probably the best way to eat, right? And then in 1980, we had the release of our low-fat guidelines, and we do see association of a steep increase in the rate of obesity. It had been pretty much in the 10 to 15% of U.S. adults were obese until those guidelines were released, and those guidelines said, don't eat fat and eat 45 to 65% of your diet with carbs. You take out one macronutrient, you got to fill it with the other, and it was filled with carbohydrates. And we have a steep rise in obesity. It's interesting that this is the Institute of Medicine dietary reference intakes in 2008. They say the same thing in 2004. I didn't go back further to see when they first started saying this. But they say the lower limit of dietary carbohydrate compatible with life apparently is 0. There is no essential amount of carbohydrate. You simply don't need it. As long as you get adequate fat and protein in your diet, you don't need any. So when Dr. Leslyn and I recommend to our patients to decrease their carbohydrate intake, not go down to 0, but just to decrease it, it's not dangerous to do that. It's perfectly healthy. It's going to be good. Even for people who are not obese, it's going to be healthy. So, and that is right out of their own statements. So, the ketogenic diet, or a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, or fat to the rescue. We're going to do low carbohydrate, moderate protein, high fat. This is what I recommend to my patients. That is what is on Dr. Leslyn's diet, is no sugar, no starch. And what we're doing is we're changing our primary fuel source to fat instead of sugar, instead of glucose. There's a reason why we are so good at storing fat, because our body really prefers to use that as a fuel source. We're saving it for a rainy day. We're saving it for famine. When we don't have food, we can live off of our fat stores. How long can you store sugar? How long can you store glucose in your body? Anybody know? Nina, you don't know? 24 hours. We can store fat for decades, right? So, because our body prefers to use fat for fuel. And interesting, what Dr. Leslyn found on one of his randomized control trials that he did on this diet was that when you're using this dietary change, low carb, high fat, you actually get fat loss without muscle loss. What happens when you're using the typical low-calorie, low-fat diet? Yes, you'll lose weight, but you're losing muscle because you're still a sugar burner at that point. You're not feeding your body the fuel of fat, so it's staying a sugar burner, and it's breaking down your muscle and taking that protein and turning it into sugar so you can keep burning sugar. So if you've seen anyone who's been on that kind of diet and they've lost a lot of weight, they look gaunt because they've lost muscle. So I would like to, right now, we're going to do a little activity that I do in my lifestyle modification group because most of my patients do not know what is a carb, what is a protein, and what's a fat. And so we're going to do a little activity where we're going to, it's just like I do with my group, but I'm going to hand you out little magnetic cards that have a food on them, and you're going to need to decide, is this mostly, because it's going to be made up of several nutrients, right? But mostly, is it carb, is it fat, or is it protein? And you're going to take your card and stand next to one of these signs. I have fat over there, carbs there, and protein there. Okay? So let's have Team Protein come on over first and put yours up where you think they should go. Okay, steak, he's putting solid in protein, turkey in protein, egg whites is protein, definitely.
Okay.
Shrimp protein, nice. Spinach, not protein. What do you guys think? What's spinach? Carb, yep. You gotta join the carb team. And non-fat milk. What do you think non-fat milk is? Carb. Non-fat milk is lactose and water. Lactose is the milk sugar. So it's carb, yeah, good. Scallops, protein, nice. Lean meat, definitely protein. Shredded pork, protein. Chicken breast, protein, no fat in that. Egg yolk, what's egg yolk? Fat. Fat, yes, yep, that's the fat. Turkish yogurt? Yes, it's going to be part carb and part, there's also fat in there too. Yeah, looking good. Okay, nice. So you can see how this exercise, sometimes we're not even sure, right? Let's get Team Carb come on up. You got a big team over there. Hey, rice, definitely a carb.
Yeah.
Brown rice. We're told brown rice is really healthy, right? Still a carb. Whole wheat, yes. Flour, yes. Carb. Potatoes, a carb. Bread is a carb. Orange juice, you are so right. Carb. Oatmeal, carb. Whole wheat, was it? Whole wheat pasta, a carb. Sugar, definitely a carb. Coconut milk is carb and fat. I put it right on the line. Yes, because coconut milk doesn't have a lot of fat in it. Quinoa, I always once thought quinoa. Quinoa is definitely carb, good job. Mushrooms is going to be carb, yes. Nice job, well done. Okay, team fat, my favorites. Come on down. Butter, definitely. Coconut oil, yes, fat. Holiday sauce, right, fat. Lard, yep. Cream, yes. Olive oil. Sausage, yes, you could, it's going to have some protein and some fat. Good job. Avocado, I would put that also on the line. It's actually some carb and some fat. Yes, good job. And foie gras, going to be some protein, some fat. Very good. Macadamia nuts, and they could be kind of in the middle there because they got some carb, they got some fat, and they got some protein, but they actually are the highest fat nut. An excellent snack food. And bacon, yes, some protein and some fat. Well done. So you can see how I actually had, when I did this with my lifestyle group, they said this was their favorite activity. I love this. So having a discussion on each one, and hey, we can argue about it too. Because there's a mixture of macronutrients in most foods, or pretty much all foods. So this could be up for discussion, but it helps you if you need to avoid one macronutrient as much as you can. You kind of have to know what it is. So my participants really, really enjoyed this activity. So let's look a little bit at page 4 of Dr. Westman's no sugar, no starch diet that he hands out to his patients. I'm going to give you just a little kind of abbreviated synopsis of it here, but I will tell you that he's given me permission to give this out. I have it saved on my computer. Anybody who wants the full 8-page handout, I'm going to give you my email address. Email me and I will send this to you as an attachment. It's really an excellent guide when you're using it for yourself and then to help your patients. Wow. So first he says, eat to unlimited quantity, eat to satiation, and he lists a bunch of meat, pork, shellfish, eggs, fat. Don't worry about saturated fat, oils, especially olive and coconut. Of course, he lists more things than this, but list them all. Now, the first thing that your patient is going to do is say, well, but I don't like red meat. So don't eat it. Take something else off the list. So what I'd like to help you do is take a highlighter. Here's page 4. Have your highlighter highlight all the things you like. Let's focus on the ones you like, and that's what you're going to eat. You don't have to eat everything on the list, just the things you like. This diet is all about being satisfied, not being hungry, and enjoying your food. 2 cups a day of leafy greens. Those are carbs, yes, but they're not available carbs. So they're mostly fiber. So they're going to go right through you. So we're just going to get the nutrients, the micronutrients from them without having our carb level go up. 1 cup a day of non-starchy vegetables, and he lists a lot more that I've just put on here. I just put a couple. So not the starchy ones like potatoes that someone put here in carbohydrates, but the non-starchy ones, the ones that are mostly fiber, so we're looking at asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. And in limited quantities, 4 ounces of cheese. 4 ounces seems like a lot to me. It doesn't seem limited. But 4 ounces of cheese, 2 tablespoons of cream, a half avocado. He lists some more things there. He lists some zero-carb snacks. When you're hungry, you should eat. If you're not ready to make a full meal, you want to grab a snack that's not going to give you some carbs. And then plenty of water. He gives a lot of other guidelines to fill out this whole thing. He's telling his patients, for weight loss, you are having a very low carbohydrate diet. You're limiting yourself to 20 grams a day or less. Typical American diet is about 150 grams and probably more. Okay? So we're taking someone from a higher level, bringing them to a very low. Once they hit their target weight, usually they can increase their carbohydrate intake again, but still going to be a low carbohydrate diet. Maybe not as very low as it is with this, but still low. Lots of randomized controlled trials showing that the ketogenic diet is a healthier way of eating. And I wanted to show you a couple things that came from long ago. So going way back to 1920, before we had insulin, how did we help people who had diabetes? Type 1 diabetes. We put them on a no carbohydrate diet because they didn't have insulin to take care of it. Now, unfortunately, these people also didn't have a way to store fat, and we need a certain amount of fat. So our typical type 1 diabetic is very thin, right? They can't store fat without insulin. But this is how we handled it, is we just took out the carbohydrate. Once we got insulin, we were able to use that. Well, go ahead and eat whatever you want, right? Even though it wasn't healthy. Epilepsy, we've been using a ketogenic diet to manage seizures for a long time. This particular article in 1938 was talking about 15 years of using the ketogenic diet to control seizures. And then we came up with anti-seizure medication, and we dropped it, right? Boy, wouldn't it be nice for our kids who have seizures to manage their seizures with food rather than medication? But we've really gone to that medication route.
Is it being used now? Are there places using
It is, but it's hard to get the word out because there's a lot of money to make on pharmaceuticals, right? But I'm showing you the oldest article on that, but there is a huge body of evidence that talks about using ketogenic diet for seizures, yes. And then a lot of us are worried about heart disease. If I eat all this fat, aren't I going to have heart disease? There's a lot of research showing that there is absolutely no problem with having dietary fat and heart disease. So you can look at, I've also given you that in your references. You have those randomized controlled trials that talked about that. Of course, type 2 diabetes, totally managed with a low carbohydrate diet. There's no reason for them to be on medication at all if they would do low carbohydrate. And all of these studies showed that the ketogenic diet was superior in weight loss. And they compared it to a low-fat, low-calorie diet. We're also looking at now neurological conditions besides epilepsy. We're looking at Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, ketogenic diet also being useful for those conditions as well. So I did my own study last year with my lymphedema patients because I definitely had a great number of patients to choose from to invite to be in my lifestyle modification group, my lifestyle redesign group. And the outcome of the group was pretty astounding. I had 10 patients that went through the whole study, and we did 3 baseline measures, and then we did all the outcomes after the intervention was finished, and then again 30 days later. And this is what we got for weight loss. If they did not use the ketogenic diet, they lost an average of 1.36 pounds. One person in that group even gained weight. These are very small groups. A total of 10 people, 4 people did not use the diet. 6 people did. The 6 people who did, in 3 months, average of 18 pounds that they lost. Okay? So it was pretty dramatic. But again, there was no control group. They kind of made their own little control because 4 people were not able to change, and 6 were. These were all past patients of mine, and they all wanted to make me happy, right? A little bit of that bias happening in that group, and the 4 were so apologetic that they could not do the diet. I said, "You're proving my point." Plus, I'm hoping that you are going to be able to change sometime in the future, because now you have the information. So just because you didn't do it in this 3 months doesn't mean it's not something that can happen later. So I thought it was pretty dramatic results. But we know, yes.
Was that diet alone, or did you also introduce?
Yes, I'm going to show you my entire group what I did, yes.
Awesome.
Because it wasn't diet alone. You're absolutely right, yes. And so a big part of the group was that we have a lot of barriers to change. We have patients that have been dieting their whole life. I think the youngest, I had someone who said that she had been dieting since she was 8 years old. And this is for failure after failure after failure. Maybe they did lose weight, but then they gained it all back and more. And so by the time they come to you, a lot of times they're helpless and hopeless. I've tried everything, this can't be done, right? And so there's a lot of barriers. We've got families, I had one person that the rest of her family was vegan, and they were sure she was going to kill herself if she tried doing this diet. Absolutely no family support.